Hey guys, welcome to another pre-release guide video for the upcoming Magic the Gathering set, Guilds of Ravnica. This video is going to be all about the Dimir Guild, our last and final guild for the Guilds of Ravnica set. If you've missed our last two videos, we did two videos on the Boros and Izzet guilds, as well as Golgari and Silencia, so I'll link off to those here as well as in the description. So we'll go ahead and jump into Dimir and finish out this portion of the pre-release guide. We've got two more videos coming out Thursday and Friday prior to the pre-release to help you get ready for it, what cards to watch out for, as well as combat tricks so that you can make sure that you are going into combat with the best intentions and the best results possible. So with that, without moving any slower, we're going to go ahead and dive right into Dimir with our 3 gold cards. These are all uncommon, so you might not see a lot of these. However, in like sealed and like Two-Headed Giant, you are getting a sealed guild pack, so you might be getting 1 or 2 of these, probably not duplicates, and then you'll get your packs of cards where you'll possibly be able to open them up as well. For those of you in draft, however, these are the kind of cards you open. You convert. They're first pickable. They push you into those colors when you see them. Third or fourth pack. Or pick, and then they're just really good cards, right? They flow with what the guild's trying to do. That's one thing that Dimir has done well. I feel like all the guilds in this set have been they've been flushed out really, really well. They all have their own keyword, but the interaction between the spells and the creatures, it seems like they've really kind of knocked it out of the park with this. And Dimir is no different. So House Guild Mage is 2/2 for 2 mana. So right there, great card. You could pay 2 and tap it, and target creature doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. This is a great way to kind of keep things at bay. The only downfall to this ability is that it doesn't actually tap the creature, right? So the creature has to be tapped for this to be relevant. However, unlike the other guilds, this second ability, 3, 1 black, 2 generic, tap it, surveil 2, is a much better ability. Being able to surveil multiple times from a single card doesn't happen very often. There isn't very many cards that have that type of ability, and you're going to see very quickly here how important Surveil is, and there's definitely some Surveil build-around cards, like 4 or 5 of these suckers, and if you couple that with this, being able to Surveil every turn and going through your deck, and I mean, even if you surveil and keep the 2 cards on top, you're still getting the benefit of knowing what's coming up. You can order them however you'd like, and then you get the added benefit of, we'll see here in a minute, the extra build around cards. Night Veil Predator's next is a 3/3 for 4 mana, 2 black, 2 blue. It's a vampire, flying, death touch, and hexproof. Vampire Nighthawk says hello. This is kind of like the upgraded version. I mean, still it costs 1 more, obviously, but it's got a higher power and toughness. But it's just all around great creature. It's flying. It's hexproof. It's going to be very difficult to deal with. It's just all around. It's value. Dimir Spybug is next. This is a 2 mana 1/1 with flying. It has menace, which is fine, I guess. So they have to have 2 flyers, so it's like extra flying, like flying high, I guess. I don't know. Whenever you surveil, put a +1/+1 counter on Dimir Spybug. So this is the first kind of build around card that surveil will benefit, right? So obviously, like, take for instance when you tap 2 mana and the black mana for the Guild Mage and Surveil 2, you won't put 2 counters on the Spybug. It's just the act of surveilling. So when you activate the Guild Mage, you will look at the top 2 cards, decide if you want to put them back in any order or put 1 or 2 in your graveyard, and then that will trigger your insect here, your Dimir Spybug. It'll become a 2/2. So, it's a growing ability, right? Being able to each turn give it a +1/+1 counter, and then also, mid to late game being able to put on multiple counters with multiple spells. So let's go ahead and dive in to the next screen here and see what our build around cards are. So the first one, and probably the most iconic, most, I guess the I don't necessarily want to say the best one, but this is definitely going to be like the most iconic, to slap you in the face. Like this card does nothing else but surveil, right? So 2 mana enchantment. You may look at 2 additional cards when you surveil each time. So the Guild Mage now only doesn't just surveil for 2; it surveils for 4. 4. You dig 4 deep. This is a great card. On top of that, you can exile the enhanced surveillance and shuffle your graveyard into your library. So, obviously surveilling multiple times, like 2 extra times each turn, you're going to get through your deck a lot quicker. And this gives you the ability to, at an instant speed, get rid of your graveyard, put it into your library. So solid card. Some people are going to call it, some people are going to call this a trap card. I don't think so, because the if this card was printed, like this type of card was printed in Return to Ravnica, I would call it a trap card, because some of those mechanics that Dimir had back then, Cipher was the ability. It just wasn't strong enough. There wasn't enough instances of it, and there wasn't enough cards that cared about it. But Surveil is such a great card, or a great ability, and it's very prevalent in the actual set itself, that this card, normally would suck, right? Enchantment that doesn't affect the board at all normally would suck. The other thing that you could possibly call for this is a way to, if you, even in the Izzet decks, right? This would be a possible pick, because being able to shuffle your graveyard back into your library and kind of start fresh, because of the way that deck works, is how fast it burns through spells. It's still just a popular card, right? So next up, we got the Phantasm. This is a 2/2 for 1 mana with Defender. Not great, but whenever you surveil, put a +1/+1 counter on it, and as long as it has 3 or more, it can attack as though it didn't have Defender. So this is an excellent turn 1 play, excellent turn 2, even in the late game, because you'll have multiple instances of surveil, right? So like if you're turn 6, you top deck this, and you're like, oh my goodness. So you play it for 1, and you got 5 mana to cast 2 or 3 spells to surveil. Not to mention like the Guild Mage being able to surveil, multiple times off of that. Whispering Snitch is next. It's 2 mana for a Vampire Rogue. It's a 1/3, which already isn't that bad, right? It'll block anything that anything that comes down on turn 1 is attacking. But it's whenever you surveil for the first time each turn, it deals 1 damage to each opponent, and you gain 1 life. So it gets better with Two-Headed Giant, right? Deals 1 damage to each opponent, and then you gain 1 life. So 2 damage, 1 life. But I think in like limited and sealed, this is a solid card, right? Especially if you've got a handful of surveil cards, right? And keep in mind, it's whenever you surveil for the first time each turn, not just your turn, each turn. So you can surveil once on your turn, deal 2, gain 1, or deal 1, gain 1, or deal 2, gain 1 on Two-Headed Giant, and then on their turn cast an instant, or cast a spell that has surveil, or you can activate your Guild Mage on their turn. And again, it doesn't require you to cast a spell. It's just whenever you surveil. So again, another build around me card. So those are the uncommon build arounds. We've got one more, Disinformation Campaign. This is 3 mana, 1 of each plus a colorless. It's an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, you draw a card, and each opponent discards a card. Now, I do know that some people will say that having your opponent choose and discard a card is a little on the rough side, because there are some benefits to having cards in your graveyard, especially for green. However, being able to draw a card is phenomenal, right? Being able to draw a card, controlling your opponent's hand, and one of the things that you'll quickly realize is how how intuitive this is with surveil. So whenever you surveil, not even cast, whenever you surveil, you get to return this to your owner's hand. So then you can cast again, draw a card, have them discard a card. So this is repeated hand manipulation, repeated card draw. And the thing is, it's just all these little abilities add up to so much for this surveil ability. Like, surveil's already a great ability. Adding something like drawing a card is just, adding a +1/+1 counter. Like, dealing 1 damage, draining your opponent for 1. I mean, like, yes, these cards take up a space in your deck. Yes, they are enchantments that don't. Well, this one it doesn't affect the board, but it comes into play and you get to draw a card, so it immediately affects the board. Immediately gets your ability. It's not when it leaves the battlefield. That would be a little more right. So a lot of these are 2 or 3 mana that are enchantments that don't affect the board or affect the board very slightly, but if you've got the surveil mechanic in your deck, like prominent, like I'm talking like, of your spells, 50% or greater have the word surveil on it, you're gonna, the deck is gonna flow perfectly. Darkblade Agent's next is 3 mana for a 2/3, so already not too shabby, as far as numbers are concerned. As long as you've surveilled this turn, the agent has death touch, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. Now, this is actually pretty interesting for a couple different reasons, and like your immediate thought is, oh well, I can surveil, give this death touch, and then attack in and draw. But using this on the defensive might be an even better use of the card. I know it says draw a card, right? I know it says draw a card, and that's a thing. Like, that's the most powerful 3 words in Magic, right? But at the end of the day, being able to control the board and stop your opponent from attacking in with their creatures, because this is, if you've got 3 mana open, right, there is a huge number of surveil cards that you can cast. So if this is on the battlefield, they have to assume that you have a surveil ability or spell. And then on top of that, like, let's say you played the Guild Mage the turn before, right? Now you could pay 3 mana and just turn on Death Touch for this thing. We'll talk about some ways to get this creature through later on. Give it some type of evasion so that you can benefit from the attacking portion of this ability. But Murmuring Mystic is next. Now this isn't necessarily a surveil card or surveil matters, but I put it in here because it's whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, create a 1/1 blue bird illusion creature token. And there are quite a few cards in this set, in this guild, spells, instants, and sorceries that have surveil. There's some, and this might be considered a trap card because you're playing 2 cards that are D's to make a card that's like a C+, right? So to make an okay card. But I feel like the interactions that these surveil cards have already with like these enchantments and creatures, surveil matter cards, I feel like this is kind of like another one of those where you can have, like, if you had like, I can imagine like this Dimir deck having 5 or 6 enchantment / creatures that care about surveil, or like the Murmuring Mystic, and drawing one of those a game, putting it on the battlefield and protecting that card, and then just surveilling and casting spells and just going wide with this thing. One thing that you'll learn is Dimir doesn't have a good selection of finishers. They've got good blockers in the early game and ways to kind of stall out the board, but they're very limited as far as what finishers they have, and they actually look to other guilds to get their finishers in the deck in those colors. So we'll get to those finishers here in a minute. But being able to go wide with these blue bird illusion creature tokens with flying is great because A, they've got flying. B, this is a 1/5 for 4 mana, so it blocks really well, and it stays on the battlefield. It's going to require a a removal spell for sure. I mean, it's going to block everything on turn 1, turn 2, turn 3, and turn 4, or anything they, for the matter, drop on those turns. Turn 4 gets a little spicy. Turn 5 is pretty much outclassed immediately, and at that point, it's you're looking at an enchantment. So, moving on. Here's some of the surveil spells that you can use. Now, they're not necessarily the best cards, right? But in the surveil deck, these are cards that will benefit you the most. So a couple commons first. Notion Rain is up first. We've got black, blue, 1 generic. Surveil 2, then draw 2 cards. Then it deals 2 damage to you. Read the Bones was a great card. And I think in this instance, Read the Bones would be better because scrying is a solid ability. But in this deck, in this surveil deck, being able to cast this and maybe drain your opponent, if you've got the one drain your opponent, each opponent for 1, gain 1 life whenever you surveil for the first time. Being able to surveil 2, right? So draw 2, then draw 2 cards. Then this deals you 2 damage. You gain 1 of it back, and then you deal 1 to your opponent. Like that's just like, or gaining a 1/1 flyer on turn 3 along with this, stack of abilities. Dazing Light is next. This is just kind of a way to dumb down some of their big things. Maybe you can use this to clear out an opponent's card with one of you, or an opponent's creature without losing one of yours. So one blue mana, instant speed common, target creature gets -3/-0 until end of turn, and then it has surveil 2. And the other thing about this is it's a great way to kind of negate damage. So like on turn 3 or turn 4, when they have a 3-drop, that's a 3/3, and maybe you have a 3/3 yourself, and they offer up the trade, right? That's the classic thing. I've got a 3/3, you've got a 3/3. I'm attacking with mine. I'm offering up the trade, and you basically say, okay, I'll block, and then I'll target yours with Dazing Lights, as surveil 2, trigger, and mine lives, yours is dead. So congratulations that you traded my mediocre spell for your 3/3, and now I still have board presence. So still a solid card. I'm kind of curious how often people will cast this just for the surveil, right? So you get to you top deck this, or you get to like turn 5, turn 6, turn 7, and you've got this sitting in your hand, and there really hasn't been a play. Do you just cast this on one of your creatures or one of their creatures at the end of the turn, surveil, and just use it for the surveil? I'm kind of curious, let me know in the comments if I'm crazy, if that's nuts. Discovery and Dispersal is next. This is kind of goes along the same lines, right? So Discovery is 1 black or 1 blue and 1 generic. Surveil 2, then draw a card. So Serum Visions-esque, right? Sorcery, speed, sad face. Dispersal's next. It's each opponent returns a non-land permanent they control with the highest mana cost among permanents they control to its owner's hand, then discards a card. This is an interesting card because if you can catch them with no cards in hand and they return their best thing, their biggest thing, and then they have to immediately discard it. Like that's I think this card gets played like 75 Discovery, 25 Dispersal, I think is like kind of the breakdown of this card. And then the last sorcery spells, again, as an uncommon. It's 2 mana, 1 blue, 1 black. Target opponent reveals their hand. You choose a non-land permanent from it. That player discards that card. Surveil 1. So a solid card, solid hand removal. I think we talked about this in the last video. Playing this early, this has kind of got a little bit of utility when it comes to playing this early. So if you play this early and they've hit, on turn 2 and they've hit their first land drop, or if they go first, they've hit their second land drop, you can look at their hand and see what they have and make a decision based on what mana they have available. So if they have a 3-drop and their third mana, and then they have like a 5, a 6, and a 7-drop maybe, or something like that, there's no sense in taking the 5, 6, or 7-drop. The newer player would do that because like, oh my god, look at those threats. Those are huge, but they don't have the mana to cast them. So if you take away the 3-drop right? They can't play that card next turn, and now they're kind of stuck. So they draw a card. If it's a land, great, play it, and then pass the turn, right? That's going to be their next turns until they can consecutively draw 2 or 3 lands to get to that 4 or 5 drop or whatever. So just be cautious of that. Don't always take like the biggest, baddest thing, right? Take a look at what they have and what mana they have, and make a educated decision. The other thing, playing this late is kind of interesting too. So if they're hitting their land drops or whatever, and you top deck this, waiting until they have like 1 card or 2 cards in their hand, because there's a reason why those cards are in their hand. Either they're an instant or instant spell that they really haven't had a great target for, or a sorcery, for that matter, that hasn't had a great target, and this will force that card out of their hand. And then vice versa, it might be their bomb rare that they just don't have the mana for yet, and you can get rid of that, and then surveil and be on your way. So really kind of be cautious of this. This is a great turn 2 play, especially if they've gone first, right? And if they miss their second land drop, you could really tighten the bolts on an opponent with this card. Okay, so some creatures that surveil that will help you trigger your Surveil Matters decks, enchantments, and creature enchantment things. Whispering Agents first, 3/2 flash for 3 mana. When it enters the battlefield, surveil 1. It's a common, it's a good card. Play every one you get. It's aggressive, right? You can play at the end of their turn on turn 3 and attack in, and you'll likely get through. Night Veil Sprites next. We talked about this one already quite a bit. Whenever it attacks, it gets a surveil. You get to surveil 1. It's a 1/2 for 2 mana, and it's got flying. So solid card. Flyers are always welcome. It's uncommon. Dimir Informants next. It's a common 1/4, so blocks really well in the early game. It's 3 mana, and when it enters the battlefield, surveil 2. So yeah, good blocker. Really good blocker, right? It's going to block the turn 1s, the turn 2s, turn 3s. Again, turn 4 kind of gets a little spicy. That gets a little rough for the 4 defense, especially when you take into account instant removal, damage spells, and red and things like that. Black's got dead weights, -2/-2, so it can get a little rough. Next up, we've got some utility creatures and some versatile creatures here. So Hired Poisoner, we've already talked about in a previous episode. It's a 1/1 Death Touch for 1 black. You'll play every one of these that you get. Dimir's a long game type of deck, right? Type of guild. So being able to play this on turn 1, turn 2, turn 3, and keep back, the bigger creatures, it's a positive thing, right? Don't feel like you have to run this out on turn 1, right? Don't feel like you do, because it's going to require a kill spell, right? And if you play that on turn 1 and then turn 2 they have a removal spell, then you really just didn't do much of anything. So then you can play like your defender or whatever, this Wall of Mist, and now you've successfully done the same thing as the prisoner. Except they can't attack, they're not going to attack into it because they don't have, it's pointless, right? They just bounce off of each other. And then keep your Death Touch creature for like a turn 5, turn 6 kind of play, and use it as like a removal spell for attacking creatures, which they won't attack into it unless they have a trick, obviously. Veiled Shades next. We've already talked about this one as well. It kind of goes into any black deck. It's just really good. 2/2 for 3 mana, and you can pump it as much as you want for 2 mana. It's a great way to, I would even consider this almost a finisher, right? If you could give this thing a evasion of some type, more power to you. So some instant spells and sorcery spells that kind of are more controlling magic and kill spells. These are all instants, or enchantment with flash. Price of Fame, instant, 4 mana. This spell costs 2 less to cast if it targets a legendary creature. I believe that's more for, I want to say that's more for standard, but there are legendary creatures in here, so that you possibly could cast this for 2. But it simply says destroy target creature, surveil 2. Right? Don't forget the surveil. It kind of hides in there with the other text, but killing a creature for 4 mana at instant speed is not that bad, right? 3 mana is kind of where it's at, but being able to surveil 2 is definitely worth at least 1 mana. Artful Takedown has got some amazing art, but it's 4 mana, instant speed, common. Choose one or both. Tap target creature. Target creature gets -2, -4 until end of turn. So tap down a creature, keep it tapped with your guild mage forever, ever, and then kill something big, right? That -2, -4 might as well say -4, right? The attack doesn't matter because you're not going to target this that's not going to kill something, right? So -4 to, it could be -10, -4, and it wouldn't matter. Capture Sphere is next. It's got flash. It's 4 mana, common, and when it enters battlefield, tap enchanted creature, and enchant creature doesn't untap during its controller's untap step. This is a great removal spell. You'll play every one of them that you get. Especially in Dimir, you're going to need them because you want the game to go long. That's kind of the key. You want to go long. You're going to get incremental damage here or there. Get in a couple points of damage with your flyers. Get in a couple points of damage with your surveilled, drain effects, things like that. Other removal spells that are at sorcery speed, dead weight, like we talked about, -2 to enchant creature for 1 black. Deadly Visit is next, 5 mana, destroy target creature, surveil 2. Both are common, play them all. Limited, whether it's 2-headed giant, sealed, or draft is 1 on the battlefield, you need removal. Black has got the best removal, so go for it. So here's the finishers, right? These are... I've called Mist Watcher and the Mist a finisher before. I still feel that way. I mean, 3/4 with flying and surveilling 2 when it enters the battlefield it's just a great card, right? It's ahead of the damage curve between the rest of the Dimir cards. So it's a solid card, right? You're gonna get quite a few of them because they are common, so you're going to see a bunch of them in draft. You're going to see, picking up 2 of these is probably your safest bet. Loath Giant, we've already talked about this in Golgari. The undergrowth ability, if you can get like 2 points of damage out of the Dimir, it's worth it, right? You're not going to get anywhere near what the actual Golgari deck does, but if you can get 2 to 3 points of damage, and then on your untapped on your second turn, this comes out, get 6 damage. I mean, right there you're talking 8 to 9 damage. That's almost half of a player's life total. This is turn 7, so hopefully you've been able to get at least a couple points of damage in. So you're looking at maybe like playing this and then 2-turn kill clock. I also put in Pass Wall Adept, just because there's so many creatures in this set, in this guild that don't have evasion and benefit from hitting your opponent or deal significant damage, but don't have a way to get through like just regular blockers, like jump blockers. So this is going to be a huge card to pick up in your Dimir guild. So 2, 3. This is just a great card. You can play it early, and it's a great blocker. If you get it in like your turn 5, turn 5 draw, or still in your hand at turn 5, I would wait until you have your Lawless Giant on the battlefield and then play this the following turn so that you can actually use the ability before it gets removed. So remember, it doesn't require you can actually do the ability the turn you play because it doesn't require to tap. So you can play this for 2 and then pay 3 and give a creature that's been on the battlefield at least 1 turn unblockable. So, all right, counter magic and control magic's up next. There's still some surveil here, right? Still some surveil. So this is exciting, right? 3 mana for Sinister Sabotage, uncommon, instant, counter target spell, surveil 1. Cancel is no more. No cancel in this set, right? This is the new cancel. Obviously, outside of this set, cancel is going to be reprinted, but this is a much better card. Unexplained Disappearance is just return target creature to its owner's hand, surveil 1 for 2. Boomerang was a thing, and this is unsummon plus surveil. So it's just you want to be on the lookout. It's at instant speed, so clearly creature attacks in, or you find a creature that has an enchantment on it, or whatever the case may be, right? +1/+1 counters. There's a lot of those in this set. A lot of those. This will reset those cards, right? Disdainful Stroke. You're going to keep this in your hand until your opponent taps a ton of mana. This is for X spells and 6 and 7 and 8 drops, and just get rid of it. Get it out of here. So going over to kind of splashable colors and what other guilds will be effective with Dimir. Like I said, Dimir has some solid creatures. They just don't have enough like evasion. Maximize Altitude is a great card from Izzet. It's 1 blue. It's a common. Target creature gets +1/+1 and gains flying, and then until end of turn. And then it also has Jumpstart. So you can, like we've already talked about this multiple times. You can give 2 creatures the ability, same turn. Still just a phenomenal card. It's a sorcery, so it works with your misstep guy for creating birds. Those have flying, but this is a great way to kind of get those extra points of damage, from the creatures that are on the ground that don't have evasion. So this is a welcome addition. Chemister's Insight, has draw 2 cards for 4 mana. That's just a good rate, right? At instant speed, no less. And then it's got Jumpstart, so you can actually discard a card and cast it again. So 3 cards, 8 mana. Not the most hateful rate, but still, this deck is going to benefit from drawing cards. Any deck is going to benefit from drawing cards. So good cards, both good cards. So as far as splashable colors goes, I think I was kind of torn between green and red, and I think with the amount of instants and sorceries in this Izzet color scheme deck, whatever you want to call it, I feel like it's leading more towards red. And these are all, Crackling Drake and Wee Dragonauts are both uncommon, so you're not going to see a lot of those. But if you open them up, this is going to pull you into splashing red, right? If you've got your Dimir deck and you're looking at, you got a couple different options as far as your splashable color goes. If you've got a Crackling Drake or a Wee Dragonauts or even a couple of Goblin Electromancers, go red. Just go red. These 3 cards are too good to pass up splashing for. And not to mention, red has the you've got the red blue Shocklands and the red blue Gates. So you've got extra usability for those cards. You don't have to go outside. You don't have to go out. Whereas with I guess with green you would be able to play the green black ones out. But nevertheless, these cards, this ability works really good. Especially, even the ability Surveil works really good with these cards, right? Putting instants or sorceries in your graveyard just to beef up your Crackling Drake, right? Or whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, the Wee Dragonauts gets +2/+0. So if you've got the Dragonauts on the battlefield, you surveil, you see 2 sorceries, like, well, I'm keeping those on top, and boom, now you've play both of those, and now you got a 5/3 with flying. So just solid colors, black and blue, and then adding red just makes them all the better. Black's already got all the removal that it really needs, so you really don't need to add any of the deal creature damage from red. You really don't need to add that, but having access to it is never a bad thing. So that's it, guys. All right, well, I appreciate you guys watching. Make sure you get subscribed if you already are. Leave a comment. Tell me about what deck, what guild you're looking at playing, what guild you want to skip out on. Are you skipping out on the Izzet? The Izzet deck's usually the one that kind of gets the shaft when it comes to the abilities. It's a hard deck to build because there's so much there's so much reliant on the spells in the Izzet deck. Now, how about the Dimir? Dimir, was a very spell-heavy deck as well in the last Return to Ravnica set. This time around, they've got some solid creatures, and Surveil is a very powerful ability, and I think it's going to get underestimated a couple times, and it's going to catch people off guard. So I'm playing Dimir in my first pre-release, so I'm kind of excited, kind of a little biased, but I think this is going to be a good set. So go ahead and check us out on twitch.tv/72DPI online. We'll be going live with our Mana Drain Magic podcast after the pre-release next Monday. Talk all about how our two-headed giant with Eli went. I'm really excited. We skipped out on the last two pre-releases, so my son and I will be going back for this one. He's playing Silencia and I'm playing Dimir, so we've got a couple of good builds kind of picked out. So we're really excited. Can't wait. Again, I really appreciate you guys watching. Have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow with the next video.